And we are live. JT here, and welcome to the huddle. The huddle is where I sit down with successful people from the world of sport and coaching. It's to learn more about their journey to greatness. Why do I have these conversations? Because success always leaves clues. I want to take a moment to thank you, whether you are watching on YouTube or whether you're listening to the audio on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me and my special guest today. And here's my friendly reminder to you. The mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's wide open. So my challenge to you is to go all in on this conversation, to remove any distractions and get laser focus on the here and the now. And I guarantee you, you will gain a valuable nugget of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. I've been looking forward to my conversation with my special guest today. We had the opportunity to connect not once, but twice last week. And, again, life's all divine timing. So I thought it was a sign that, I'm going to invite him into the huddle and give him an opportunity to share his journey to greatness. My guest in the huddle today is a Waterloo Warrior alum. He's a Windsor Lancer alum, but more importantly, he's an amazing human being. My guest in the huddle today is Dealius Danso. How are you today, brother?
I'm good. Great to be here. When you asked it for me to, partake in the huddle, I was excited, I
Yeah,
mean, talking with a guy like you embody greatness and I can't wait to be a part of that. So I'm feeling great right now for sure.
awesome. Well, I appreciate that, brother, and I'll take a moment to receive those words and those kind words. Um, Before we get kicked off, I want to take a moment to count my blessings. For me, it's a daily practice. Some days I do it better than others, but I do find those days where I'm most consistent and most intentional counting those blessings. I do find those days are filled with a little bit more love, a little bit more joy, a little bit more peace. And I'm a big believer, biggest blessing you can give anyone is your time and energy. So just want to thank you again for blessing us with some of your time and energy here today.
I appreciate it. Thank you as well. It's an honor to be here and I can't wait to tell my story. And, if there's anyone my story reaches out to and, they take something from it, I'm grateful to God and grateful that people are listening, So I'm grateful to be here.
Absolutely. So, as we get kicked off in the huddle, the one thing I always like to do is to remind others, and myself included, that life is a game and games are supposed to be fun. I had a coaching colleague and a great friend that would remind us, we all have these things that make us unique and different. Our responsibility really is to celebrate it. So I'm curious, what's an interesting fact about you that maybe a lot of people don't know that you'd be open to sharing with our community today?
Interesting fact. All right. I guess the most interesting is I love to sing. A lot of people don't realize it, but when I get nervous or when I'm in a situation where I need to let loose, I'm actually either singing in my head or I'll sing out loud. I'll make up funny songs and people will be like, "What is he saying?" So that's my interesting fact. I'm a singer at heart. Don't know if I'd go make be a musician professionally, but I love to sing for sure.
Okay, okay. I'm curious, what is it about singing? Like you said, when you're feeling maybe that sort of, that discomfort, right? And it's interesting, humans' relation with discomfort. What is it about singing that you sort of gravitate to?
I think singing when you sing, it really calms you down in my perspective. So when everything's in rhythm, you tend to be more calm and focused. And I think singing does that for me in that sense. So when I'm feeling a little bit nervous, when I'm feeling a little bit maybe like my emotions are too high or too low, I'll sing just to level things out, and it just puts me in a rhythm, right? And I think as an athlete, being in a rhythm is the most important thing. It helps you execute and stuff like that. So I think that's where I got that from, right? You sing even pregame, like I'll be singing, get myself hyped up, and I'm in a rhythm now. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to go. So that's what singing does for me. It puts me in a rhythm and it gets me going for sure.
Mm. It's interesting that you talked about that idea and you shared this idea of like being in rhythm, right? Or, I think of athletes, the ability, and we talk about football, the ability to come to balance, right? Harmony, unity, whatever that is. It's interesting how it's really foundational to performing at your best. So I'm curious, sport has obviously played an important role in your life, right? You were a
So
high quality athlete, right? You grew up in the Brampton Peel area, and then you went on to U Sport and were, a significant contributor at two schools, right? And then you
mhm.
transitioned into becoming a high quality coach. So I'm curious, what life lesson have you taken from sport that you find yourself applying to other areas of your life today?
I would say so throughout my journey, and it's funny that you say I played at both schools. What essentially happened was, just to give a brief background, was I did my undergrad at Waterloo, and then actually transitioned to coaching. Found out I had a year left and played the
Mm,
following year. So it's kind of a special case, and I don't think that's ever been done. And I think the lesson I got from that was you never know who's watching you, so you just put your best foot forward. You know what I mean? Um, at Waterloo, coming in, I was one of the high recruits in Bert's era. That was I was Bert's first recruiting class, and I was a notable guy. And what I got from that was, hey, I'm gonna be the guy, come into that linebacker role and be an immediate impact. And I think that was where that trajectory was going. Games started slowing down for me. I was seeing the field more, and I get that injury, right? However, that trajectory changed, and I could have easily said, "Hey, I'm done playing." You know what I mean? Like this is it. I don't think sports is it for me because I've never been injured before that. But I kept pushing. I put in the hard work every single year. Unfortunately, I was injury riddled every year. Um, but hey, I exhibition games. I'm putting my best foot forward, and I guess I got notoriety through that. I remember my fourth year, Coach Burr would come to me and said, "Hey, teams are looking at you. They're asking, who's this guy? Who's this guy?" Washington was actually one of the preseason games that we had that year, and I actually balled out. And hey, things come full circle. JP was on that team that year,
mm,
so I guess he remembered me. When it was time for me to kind of like look and explore careers, I was like, hey, why not apply to Windsor? Actually, shout out to Josh Brown who told me Windsor was hiring because they got JP just got the coaching job there. He's like, hey, I think you'd be a great coach. I applied, and JP said he heard of me. He said he remembered me from the preseason game. And we had that interview, we had that talk, and he loved everything I was about, my values and stuff like that. And he said he really knew, he saw that I knew the game. My IQ was there. We had the interview, and it was great. I was the right fit for, I guess, the coaching role he was looking for. So got the job, right? So I wasn't an all-star guy. I wasn't an all-Canadian guy. But I know that every time I was on the field, you couldn't say that guy wasn't putting his best foot forward. You know what I mean? I was definitely someone you would notice. So all I gotta say is you never know who's looking, whether
mhm.
it be a scout, whether it be a coach that in the future, you might need in the long run, they can put in a great word for you. So if there's any advice, play like it's your last game. Play like it's
Mhm.
your last game, and you never know where that's gonna take you.
It's interesting that you share that, and I appreciate you being so open, right? And one thing that people often recognize is, I personally always use this idea of high quality. And part of the reason I use the word high quality is, the ability to navigate, challenge and change like you had to multiple times, like speaks
Mhm.
volumes about the quality of person you are, right? And I love how you talked about like make the most of this rep, right? Make the most of this opportunity, make the most of today because you never know where it's going to lead you. So I'm
So
curious, how has that lesson served you um, beyond the football field? Like, is it something that you apply to other areas of your life today?
for sure. I guess I'll talk about my MBA. When I got into my MBA, I guess I had to take a leadership role, and that was kind of like the mindset I wanted to put myself in, being in an uncomfortable position. And I've never been one to kind of like step forward, and I'm an outgoing guy, but I've never been one to step forward and be the first guy to do something, right? Take that initiative. So I kind of brought that mindset into the NBA. I was like, hey, I'm going to try new things. I'm going to open to everything, and if there's something I can do, I'm going to be the first one to put my hands up. Kind of be that guy that leads everyone to doing things. So I remember we had our leadership class, and that's one of the courses that you had to take for the NBA in the first term. And the prophet's like, hey, I need someone to like come up and play this role. It was part of our. We had to read a book, and it was part of that curriculum. And then I was like, hey, why not? I'll do it. Put my hands up. From that day on, I remember anything that I do, guys are looking up to me. Guys are like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I actually ended up being someone that the cohort looked up to, and I think every time you were part of my group, it was a vibe. It was a good vibe because people felt comfortable. They knew that I'd put myself first forward before anyone else. I'd tell anyone else to do something. So it generated a lot of success for me in the NBA, and you know, I will say the NBA was one of my best academic years,
Mm.
and I wouldn't trade it for anything just because I put my best foot forward, right? I wasn't shy, I wasn't nervous. I said, I'm just gonna put myself out there, and whatever comes out of it comes out of it. You never have expectations, but you hope for the best.
Mhm. It's interesting that you share that, right? Like, I'm sure that that sort of putting yourself out there, did it feel warm and fuzzy? Did it feel like, all sunshines and rainbows at all times, or was it a little uncomfortable when you first did it?
It's very uncomfortable the first few times around just because again, it's a new group, right? And I think for a lot of people, people don't put in their best foot forward because they're scared that their best foot forward or the best action they put out there won't be enough, right? So you're scared to put in that 100%. And what I learned from it is that no one's perfect. Whatever you're great at, it's in some areas you're not gonna be good at in other areas. You know what I mean? So everyone's you can build off of each other. It's just a matter of who's gonna step up first, right? Who's
Mm,
gonna put their best foot forward and let people know it's okay to put in whatever you got into this one thing you're doing or multiple things you're doing.
mm,
Um, I think it helped me out just because I learned a lot of things about people and I learned a lot of perspectives. I learned a lot of skills from other people because now people are comfortable to show me what they've got. You know what I mean? People are comfortable to be like, hey, like, I want to do this. What do you think about it? You know what I mean? And you learn a lot from them. You'd be surprised what you would hear from people when you're the one that's putting yourself out there. You're the one that's putting yourself in a vulnerable state. People are like, oh, like I really mess with that dude. I think he'd be a great person to know. He'd be a great asset to my team. You know what I mean? And that's what I've been doing all the time. Being open minded and going out there meeting people. I mean, last week you just said it. We were at two events, and I put myself out there. So those are events that I didn't have to be at, but I chose to be there. And
mhm,
I made a lot of connections last week, and we've met Bill Crothers.
mhm.
We were talking to you, and I could have just kept my mouth shut, right? But I was telling you my story, and you loved it, and then we connected right off the bat. So
Yeah.
you know, it, everyone's got a story to tell, and I think you got to be proud of that story when you're talking about it, and that's how I go about things now. You know what I mean? You can't be shy about telling your story because people feed off that energy, and whatever energy you put out is what you get back.
Mm. I love that reminder, right? That idea of energy, right? That the idea of energy is like a boomerang, right? And we always get to choose what energy we put out, positive, negative, but it's always going to come back to us. And one of the things that I appreciate about you the most, and this is how I knew you were different, that you're willing to put yourself out there. It just happened to be like, where, I'd spoken to the team, I think a week or two before, right, virtually, and then here we are, I'm out for a run, and then you guys stroll in and you're stopped, right, in transit to Ottawa. And here you are, and you come up and introduce yourself, and you put your best foot forward, and we just have a great conversation. Fast forward, here we are a year and a half later, and we're having this conversation. So again, all of that happened because you chose to put your best foot forward when
Yeah,
you didn't have to.
I didn't have to. And that's the thing. You always have that choice, right? They say there's always two regrets, the regret of doing it now or the regret of like, not doing it. And there's two types of suffering actually. Suffering of doing it now or the suffering of not doing it. You have those regrets. And you don't want to suffer later because suffering later is the worst kind of suffering you have. If you suffer now, and that would be putting yourself out there, coming out of your comfort zone, trying a new skill, whatever it might be, just it's uncomfortable, so you're gonna suffer a little bit. But once you get comfortable with the uncomfortable, all things are possible. And like you said, I could have just strolled by and said, "Hi, it was nice. Like it was nice to meet you. You had a great presentation last week." But I didn't. I chose to stay there and hear you out because I thought you had a great message, and I thought I let you know and talk about my story because in the future, I never, you never know what someone could do for you, right? We're
Mhm.
here now. My story is going to be out there. These kids are going to listen, and that could help someone else. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
someone's probably going to need this message, and hey, it comes around full circle. That's all I got
Mhm.
to say.
Yeah. So I'm curious, one thing about that's unique about your journey is it's had some trials and tribulations, right? All of our
Yeah,
journeys do, like you said, it's not perfect. It's not all rainbows and sunshines. There are trials and tribulations, but through trials and tribulations, it does help you become a stronger, more powerful version of yourself.
for sure.
So, like, I'm curious, what was the inspiration between pursuing this pathway of continuing your, passion of football, right? Initially it was coaching, but to pursuing an MBA, to, what was sort of the inspiration behind that?
I would say, to be honest, credit to all my friends, my close circle. You know, I wouldn't say like, hey, I just thought about, hey, let me go do my master's or anything like that. My close circle, they have friends that are in great careers and they're going to do big things in the future. And I get motivated by that, or I just don't want to be left behind, right?
Hmm.
Because I look at myself, I'm like, hey, 10 years from now, where am I going to be? I think about that stuff when I see them because I want to be where they're at. And guys like Chris Osikusi, Ben, those are guys that I look up to because they're doing great things and I don't want to fall behind. So
Hmm.
that's definitely a credit to them. I remember when you're young and you come into undergrad, especially when you're getting recruited for football and you're seen as one of the top guys, you're automatically thinking, let me go pro. Pro is the only thing.
Hmm.
Um, it's pro or nothing at that point. You know what I mean? Because if I'm getting recruited, I'm being noticed as the one of the big recruits, then why not, right? And when the injury started to happen, it kind of had that mental switch where it's like, hey, I got to start having a plan B, right? I got to start focusing on school more. Um, I got to put myself in the positions where, when the time's coming, I'm done undergrad. If I choose to go back to my master's, if I choose to do a master's, or if I choose to, I don't know, get a job and grades are a factor, I'm in the right position. And I remember it was COVID when I finished school. And I remember I was just in a dark place. Couldn't think of what I was going to do after my undergrad and just thinking about what are my options because everything was closed and you're not thinking, oh, this is just temporary, right? So when Josh Brown was like, hey, you got to do your undergrad, you got to what's it called, pursue coaching because I think you'd be a great coach, right? I was like, why not, right? That's when I think things started to open up for me. That's when I started to explore options. Again, I'm talking about my close circle. I talked to Chris, told him, hey, I'm be coaching at Windsor, and Chris was like, yo, why don't you try to do your master's while you're coaching there, right? He's like, they might not be able to pay you a salary, but you can always do your master's, right? I was like, yeah, you're right. I got the grades. Why not? Why not try? And lo and behold, get there. I get the coaching job, and Coach Caselli's like, hey, we can't pay you a salary. Literally, I feel like Chris predicted this. He's like, we can't pay you a salary, but what we can do is get you in your master's. And the rest is history. I'm here now, So it's great to know that I have people around me that want to see me succeed and want to see me improve, and they kind of level up my expectations of myself. You know what I mean? Because everyone's gonna have expectations of you, but when you have expectations of yourself, that's when you accomplish the most. So that was, I think, my close circle. They level me up and they make me think highly of myself. they create value in me that I never thought I had, and I hold that value brings higher standards for myself. So
Mhm.
that's where it's at.
I love what you shared there. And what really resonated was a couple things. One, the idea of, people, we often use this cliche in sport, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah,
It's very evident listening to you that your inner circle, your tight circle sharpens you because
yeah,
they are highly ambitious, highly driven, highly open-minded. So that inspires you to be the same as well.
yes, sir.
And it's interesting how you've chosen to be around like, somewhere like Windsor, where, knowing Coach Cercelli well, it's like you're putting an environment where it's so much bigger, right, than football. And he talks about this idea, let's use the next four to set you up for the next 40.
Yes, sir.
So I'm curious, what was it like, in that transition from, I mean, I think what's unique about your story is you've been a high quality athlete. You've been a high quality coach, and now you're transitioning into the world of business, all like within like a matter with all in the same year. So I'm curious, like, what is it like having that perspective where you've worn many different hats in a very short time?
I think, oh man, I think every chapter builds the next one. And if that, I don't know if that makes sense, but when you're reading a story, sometimes you get to the end of that chapter and you start to predict what's going to happen next chapter. That's kind of what it is for me. And, get into my coaching, I was thinking of like, what's going to happen when I get into my master's and when I'm done my master's. And I didn't even know I was going to be able to play again, right? I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to help these guys out. I want to be I want to change the culture because they're an 0-8 team. And that thing was like, I wanted to build respect through my knowledge, through me demonstrating that I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm saying and showing it to these guys. And it pays off because I do that, and these guys know, hey, this guy really knows the game. He knows this position, which I coach. I was the assistant D-line coach, and they gave me that respect where it's like, oh, D, yo, I'm trying to figure this technique out. I want to understand what I need to do here. Let me able to tell them. They're like, okay, that makes sense. And then I find out I have a year left. That's the next chapter, right? Now I'm going to be an athlete. I'm going to play with these guys. I'm put in their leadership role automatically because I coached them the year before,
Mhm.
and I got to treat my relationship with them a lot different. But it was such a smooth transition because that coaching chapter, I left such a good mark on them that they were able to accept me as a player and as a leader, right? I wasn't a captain because Coach Cicelli understood that there are other guys that he wanted to put captain for the long term, but he always said, "You're a leader. Guys look up to you, guys." Especially we got Mafta, Kalade, who's led the league in sacks last year. These are guys that look up to you. Like we need you to keep doing what you're doing and put your best foot forward and lead by example. And I was doing that. So that also led into school. I was like, I want to be able to show these guys that even though I'm playing football, school also matters. I'm going to put school first. Again, student athlete. Student is first, athlete second. So I prioritize school. I showed them, hey, yeah, football has a tough schedule, but you can balance it. You just got to sacrifice a few things, right? So that's what I did. Maybe sacrificing that free time just to get an assignment done or homework done. Just leading, showing them by example. I was always in the locker room, either doing schoolwork or planning something out for school. And these guys saw it and they started to respect that, right? Because I'm leading, I'm doing what I need to do on the field, and I'm also um, accomplishing things by through school. So I think, like I said, each chapter builds up to the next chapter, and it's built that resilience in me for sure because it makes me believe that I can do anything. And when you show it to other people, they also see that they can do anything. We've got guys that, again, when I came in, they weren't guys that people thought highly of them, and now like I look at every single guy at that locker room at Windsor, and we're like, yo, I'm excited to see what's coming next because there's a whole turnaround, and that's from that culture of love, serve, and care. You know what I mean? You put in what you get in what you put in, right? And we put in that love, we put in that serve, and we put in that care, and that's something that I attribute to the coaches there, and just my experiences for sure. Every experience led to the other, and wouldn't trade it for the world.
Mm. No, it's interesting as you share, right? And a word that came up a lot that you used was this idea of show, right? And it's interesting because, we live in a time where it's so easy to say with your words, I want this. I want to be a great student, right? I want to be a great athlete, right? I want to be a great, you know, husband. I want to be I want to make $1 million, all that stuff. And all that stuff's great. But what if we just take a look at your actions and just observe them? Are you really showing that you're committed to that process, right? Are you willing to make decisions to sacrifice time and energy? And so I really love that idea of show because it's just a reminder that actions are always more powerful than your words.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I'm curious, you've been blessed to be able to be guided by a lot of great, mentors and coaches. How important has that been? Because I think what's unique to your story is you've had some people that lead by example, that show through their actions.
Yes, sir.
Again, what has that been like for you being able to have great, mentors and coaches that lead by example, not just through words?
I would say when you see someone do something that when you see someone do something that you're supposed to do, it instills a little bit confidence in yourself just because you understand that it's possible. You know what I mean? You just got to try,
Mm.
right? And throughout throughout my years of my athlete career, I've seen guys that have done remarkable things on and off the field, and I'm like, hey, if I just put in this much effort, I can do that too, right? And I'm just gonna talk from even just Waterloo. Coach Burt, when he came in, he was all about getting the right guys into this program, turning this program around. And I've been fortunate to be part of two 0-8 teams or just losing teams and turning the program around. And it's always been about doing what you say you're gonna do, right? Coach Burrow was like, I'm going to bring in the right guys. He, again, brought Trey Ford, Tyrell, Gordon, Tyler, all these guys,
Mm.
and he turned the program around. And that's motivating to know that these coaches come in here, they say they're going to do something, and they do it. They put it out there that they're going to do something. They show that they're doing it, right? And that was something that I really respected, and I understood that sometimes when you say something, you got to show it because you can't just say it and then not produce. People aren't going to respect you that way. You go to Windsor, Coach Caselli talks about, I'm gonna look out for you guys. I understand that, you know, your experiences here haven't been the greatest, but I'm gonna make sure this turns around, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm bringing in the right people to help turn around this program. What does he do? He shows it. He goes out of his way. I remember Coach Caselli, like when I needed a place to stay and I couldn't find houses, Mike Caselli was like, I have a house here. You can rent for me. It's perfect. And I'm gonna take care of you. We understand that you've come a long way to be a part of this team. We're gonna look out for you. Anything you need, we'll look out for you. And JP Cicely, till this day, I talk to him all the time just because you sit in a room, you sit in an office in a room with this guy, you pick up so much from him. And having mentors, you don't make the same mistakes that they did because they're gonna show you that they're gonna let you know that this mistake is you don't want to do this again. Like you're just slowing down, you're reaching your potential doing these mistakes, right? It cuts that short. Like you can reach your potential faster when you don't repeat those mistakes that they did, and you just got to be able to listen, right? And I want to be in positions that they're in. I want to be able to inspire and motivate guys and look out for other people because I wouldn't be where I am by
Mm.
myself, right? And I've learned that, if someone's saying something, they know what they're saying because they've gone through it and they've explained to me why they're saying this. So I definitely know that they've been through it and they don't want me to go through that. I know that they care. That's why it's so important to have these mentors because, man, I would have made a lot of mistakes if it weren't for them. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. It's interesting that, again, what you shared, and you talked about this idea of, again, you've been blessed to be around leaders that if they say they're going to do something, they're going to follow through. And it's interesting how it's a powerful reminder that when you follow through on the promises and commitments you make to others, what naturally starts to happen is you start to build these golden bridges of trust. And
Mhm.
when that happens, then people start to open up, right? So it's just that idea, a great reminder that as effective leaders, you have to be willing to give trust to others before you can receive it back.
Yes, sir.
And I love how you talked about this idea that you get to show it, right? All the time. So I'm curious, as you embark on this new chapter in your life, right, where you're starting to venture into the world of life after sport and start to create this beautiful life. What are you noticing? Like, how are these experiences setting you up as this new adventure unfolds?
I mean, I want to get into, I'm just going to say, I want to get into an industry where it's very niche in Canada,
Yeah.
and you've got to go above and beyond to get into this industry, right? You got to put yourself out there. And I think my experiences from the jump, from getting to school at Waterloo and, getting to my MBA, it's been about putting your best foot forward. It's been about coming out of your comfort zone. It's been about just putting yourself out there, being in a vulnerable state. These experiences have led me to, be able to do things that before I'd be shy to do,
Okay.
right? It'd be because it's like, hey, I want this, but I have self doubt. Am I really going to get it? Now it's like, hey, I want this, and I know it's not going to be easy to get it, but I know if I go in and just try, if I go in and I just, you know, say hi to this one person or even talk about my experiences, letting them know what my values are, it will generate something, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's not right now, in the long term, it will. So going into this kind of like period of my time, it's a slow period and transition for sure. It's been all about, you know, talking about my values, talking about showing who I am, right? Again, we talk about show the whole time, doing the things I said I would do. Again, networking, that's one of the biggest things for this industry. And, I want to be in the sport industry and I gotta, find networks. I gotta create networks. I'm going to these MLSC networking events where we saw each other. I'm going to Switch Mentality networking events. I'm volunteering at MLSC for football clinics and stuff like that. I'm doing again. I have a digital platform called DawgsonDLine where I'm creating teach tapes for D line defensive linemen who the young defensive linemen who aspire to be in positions that I was in, or even cohorts that I played against and played with were in. So these are all the things that I know will generate or in the long run produce the results that I want. And
Mhm.
success doesn't come right away. It takes a long time and you just got to be patient. It also builds character when you're patient, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting that you talk about that and what really resonates with me is you talked about patience, right? And that's one thing I've really learned along this journey is, and maybe it's a blessing I've had from having two parents that immigrated to this country, is, I've rarely struggled with ambition and drive and a willingness to get after it, right? Like that's kind of the default, like sort of the quote unquote, the hustle, the grind. Like I
Mm-hmm.
get that part. But it's interesting how really learning how to be more patient, like to, yes, plant the seeds, but then you got to water them. You got to give them the sunlight, right? And just that
Exactly.
time. So it's funny how I've had to learn sort of that patience, and it's something I work on every day, and something I struggle with at times. But I've learned that patience thing is it moves the needle in your life.
It really does. And even now, like, even though I know I've got to be patient sometime,
Yeah.
when you're doing something and you feel like you put in your best effort and you want the results now, like sometimes you get so antsy and you get so frustrated not seeing the results happen. Patience is something that even if you learn to have it, it's still not easy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not easy at all. So you've got to remind yourself that, things aren't short term, things are long term, and long term things take a while to grow, right? Again, you talk about watering the seeds, and seeds don't just grow overnight to trees. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They grow from seeds to little buds to plants to trees. So again,
Mhm.
that I'm a little plant right now. You know what I mean? I'm a
Yeah.
little plant, and I'm waiting to grow to be a tree.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take a while. Every day I'm growing, whether it be a centimeter or an inch or whatever it is, or however small, however big, however small. I know I'm making growth and I'm building character and I'm building all these necessary tools that I'm gonna need when I'm in that position where I need to be at.
Yeah. I'm curious from your perspective as an emerging leader, right? Because again, I'm enthused to see where your next journey is. Like I know it's there and I know the painting, the picture slowly coming to form. I'm curious how how important do you think it is for an emerging young leader to understand like the way they're wired? Like, guys like you and I, like we naturally have that ambition, that drive, we're willing to get after it. How much of that is understanding that's your wiring, where you have other people that might be sort of wired where, they need someone to light a fire under their arse, right? And so I'm curious, how important do you think it is to kind of know what your natural wiring is?
Um, Sometimes you won't know right away. That's the first thing I will say. And sometimes you need people to point out certain flaws to know the type of person you want to be. Because you can have an image of yourself,
Yeah.
but you can also not be that image at the same time, right? You can have this image of being like this hardworking guy, this ambitious guy, but in reality, you're not that person because you're not taking initiative. You're not doing things when no one's looking. You know what I mean? Those are things that if we put a camera in the sky, you didn't know would show who you really are. You know what I mean? And that's something I heard before. So the way I think about it is, hey, what are people saying about me? You know what I mean? When doors are closed behind me, what are people saying? And if when I think about it and it's not the things that I would want them to say, I got to make a change. And always like I think it's important. Like you got to have at least five close friends who are brutally honest with you because I would say this. I'm not close to perfect, and I'm definitely won't be close to perfect in anytime soon. But I've had close friends who always call me out on certain things that I do or certain things that I have become a habit and that I need to change. And it's made me realize like I gotta self-evaluate myself sometimes. Like when I do things, I gotta think about what I did and why I did this and if I need to change it or if I don't need to change it. So sometimes you have this image, right? You want to be this guy, but you're not there. Are you self-aware in that sense? Are you able to like say, hey, how come I'm not this guy that I say I am? Why am I not this guy that I say I am? Are there things that I'm doing that's preventing me from being this guy that I say I am, right?
Mhm.
And when you're able to self-evaluate yourself and you're honest with that self-evaluation, you know, and you take in what other people are saying about you, right? What your close friends are saying about you. Like, D, you're always procrastinating. You hear that often and often and often. That's not something you want to hear about yourself.
Mhm.
What are you going to do about it? Are you going to change it, or are you just going to sit there and just take it? Because if you're sitting there, you just take it. You're still that same guy. You're not the image that you have of yourself. So I would say it's very easy to say, oh yeah, like I knew myself from the jump, whatever. Like I knew I was going to be this guy. That'd be a lie. I didn't know who I was, coming into university, and even now I'm still finding out things about myself that I didn't think I'd ever know about myself. So, and it all stems from hearing from people and people saying things about me, or people even just straight up telling me to my face like you're being this guy right now, and I don't appreciate it. Like you got to change. Like you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And me being honest with myself and saying, hey, like I have this image of myself, and I got to get to that image. I've got to make these changes and be this guy and be this guy and be consistent with these changes, right? Because consistency is the key to success, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So it goes from again, some people have that self-awareness from the jump, and some people don't. I didn't have that self-awareness from the jump. I just had an image of myself, and I always it's kind of like when you think about I'm a big anime guy, and when you think about the main character, you always want to be that main character. That's kind of like the mental vision I have of myself. I'm that main character. This is my world, and am I that image of this main character that I have in my head?
Yeah.
If I'm not, then that means I got to change something about myself, right? So I know you got to put passion into everything you're doing, and when you
Mhm.
have passion, it also drives results, and these results stem from you knowing yourself, being self-aware, listening to people, getting feedback. critiques, all this stuff, and you being willing to accept and make changes for sure. So that would be my way of saying like, hey, this is how I stay driven. This is how I stay
Yeah.
ambitious. I'm very, very honest with myself, and sometimes I'm gonna hear things I don't like, and in the moment I might not react the way I'm supposed to, but I'm gonna think about it for sure.
I love, again, I appreciate the honesty, the openness and the transparency. Similar to you, um, it's taken a lot of reps and sets. I would probably say it's taken me to about my 40s for me to truly have an understanding, right? And not only doing the work on myself, putting in the reps and sets, the time, the energy, right? And investing money into myself to learning more about myself. But really, like you said, it's finding that trusted group of like life advisors, right? That are, most people tell you what you want to hear in life, but are they willing to tell you what you need to hear, which is actually going to propel you so you can get to where you want to go,
Yes,
right? So
sir.
it's a great reminder that the importance of having trusted advisors. And I also love the fact you remind us we all have our blind spots.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I'm curious, I want to be respectful of your time and energy. What's next for you? I know you mentioned you have some, you're actively pursuing creating a life in sport. What can we keep an eye out for you? What can we do to help and support what you are helping to grow right now?
I think the biggest thing for me is, you know, being someone who, sport kind of saved my life in a sense of like it helped me get into school, and it made me realize like there's life after my sport. I think what I'm doing for my community, or even just the youth who want to be in football, is I talked about my digital platform, DawgsonDLine. That's something that I thought about when I was young. Like, I didn't have any mentors or anyone teaching me, hey, these are the terminologies or these are the techniques you're going to need to know when you get into university football. You know what I mean? So when coach is saying something, you're not wondering what is he talking about. You already have that. You have that idea. So I created Dogs on Deal. It's a training platform where I train guys, but as well, it's going to be an educational platform where I'm interviewing new sports athletes. I'm interviewing CFL athletes and just any football athlete who's willing to come onto my platform and share their knowledge and IQ and help out the younger generation who aspire to be in their position. So
Mhm.
I have guys like Ife, I have guys like Tyson, I've got guys like Kalade who they're willing to do it, and I'm gonna interview them and put out these teaching platforms. And as well, if they need the training, they just hit me up on Dogs on D line. Um, I'm just going to keep applying to be involved in youth sports and to be involved in MLSC, any sporting event that I can make it out to or just be involved in and be involved in it, create networks so that when the time comes and someone needs me, I'm like, hey, I know this guy, they can help you out. So that's kind of, I want to be a resource for sure.
Mhm.
And in Canadian sport, I want to be a big resource to every athlete and not just football, every single sport. Cause I love playing sports. It's a, I consider it a hobby in terms of like, even if I wasn't getting paid for this, I'd still be doing it. And I do it right now. You know what I mean? So um, I want to be that resource where people can come to and whatever they need, I'm able to help them out. So that's what it is. So that's something that people should look out for and, you know, hit me up, If you need anything I can help you out, I'll figure it out. And if I can't help you out, I'll go find someone who can help you out. I'm
Mhm.
trying to be that resource. And in the long term, I'm not putting you out there. I'm the one making it happen for you. You know what I mean? You come to me and I'm gonna make it happen. So that's what it is. The Dogs on D line. I'm gonna put myself in positions where I create great connections and build myself up so that when the time comes and I need to grow the sport in Canada, I'm going to, and it won't be a problem at all.
Mhm. Well, brother, we'll be sure to share out the social handle in the description on the podcast and on YouTube. Delius, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I want to acknowledge you for, the great man you are, the great coach you are, the great mentor you are, but more importantly, the amazing human being you are. The one thing I've really taken from this conversation is how committed you are to being a shining light in this world. And I know that's something that gets, thrown around a lot, but what that means for me is you are someone who has had great coaches and mentors pour into you. And now what you want to do is you want to take all of your lived experience and share it with others and to sort of shorten their pathway to greatness. So thank you for your willingness to do that. And thank you for reminding me of this important idea that, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I appreciate it for having me out here on your platform. You're doing great things, and I'm a big fan of yours. You inspired me, and I'm going to be seeing you this weekend. I told you I'll be at the Timo event, so I'll see you this weekend, and I'm going to support. And I know we're going to have continue to have great talks in the future, whether it be a next huddle interview or podcast, or whether it be in person or even a phone call. Anytime you need me, just I'm just one dial away. One dial
Absolutely.
away.
Absolutely, brother. I appreciate that. So, folks, Delius dropped so many valuable nuggets of wisdom that will not only help you succeed in sport, but more importantly, in the game of life. But as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, knowledge is potential power. It's a consistent and focused application of great knowledge that actually creates greater results in your life. So, my challenge to you is to take one of these valuable nuggets of wisdom and go apply it to your life today. And as I like to remind you every week in the huddle, you are deserving of greatness. You are worthy of greatness. You are greatness. And my only ask from these conversations, if it resonated with you, if it touched your heart, then please share it with a friend, a loved one, a teammate, or just someone you think that would benefit from listening to these positive, inspiring, and empowering ideas. The more people we have listening, understanding, and applying these simple principles to their life, the more blessed this world will be. As always, love having these conversations with you in the huddle. Have a blessed rest of your day, everyone.